not going to play any music. Oh, we're back. Welcome to Popular Cinema Podcast Part 2. If you're wondering what happened, um, we were discussing the Gifted trailer when we got cut off, which is why the show has been delayed for another week. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
I
Apparently,
don't know
over
what
here,
I don't know what you're talking about. I thought we just paused for a second for me to run to the bathroom, and now we're back.
well, technically, when I splice it in, it's going to sound kind of weird because the last thing we ended with you is saying something about gifted, and you actually finished your sentence, and then we went dead. So now, when I splice it up, it's going to be quite jarring, especially for like superfan Nadia driving or superfan Melissa flying, to be like, what the hell happened? And I lost all electricity up here at the studio.
How long did it take them to restore your power?
4 hours.
That's actually faster than it usually takes them to restore ours. So I was kind of surprised that yours was up that early. I kind of thought you were gone for the night because it usually takes them all night to fix ours.
Now I know it's like Ready Player One down where you live, where the electricity goes out every 10 minutes when the wind blows.
Yeah, it does. It's actually really kind of sad and pathetic.
But up here, I don't seem to have those issues. I just found it to be quite odd that in the middle of our podcast, I haven't had a electric outage in several months. That in the middle of a podcast on a Sunday, the electricity goes out. I mean, what are the odds?
Was there an accident or something in your area?
Well, I really couldn't access the internet or anything else like that because I had no power bill, so I wouldn't know.
Didn't you have your phone?
My thumb.
Your phone?
Yeah, but I was too depressed. When I
Because
go,
if you
when I don't
don't,
get to do the podcast, I get depressed. It's our episode 50th,
well,
and I was hope.
I'm more excited about this week's episode actually because this is actually our 2 year anniversary episode. It's episode
Oh,
52 and our 2 year anniversary at the same time, so that's kind of cool. But
oh,
if you as far as the notifications when the power goes out, if you put whatever your power company is on your Twitter, you'll get like notifications whenever they have a problem. It's kind of cool.
check out the big brain on Brad. You know, you're always dropping pearls of wisdom. That's like when you come up here for like our movie get-togethers, you're always dropping some sort of like sci-fi tech up here with me.
Yes, and the last one I dropped was about using Pocket, and then you don't use it. So sometimes I feel stingy with my Bon Mots because you don't really take advantage of them fully sometimes.
I find the Pocket is cool. I just don't know if it's really necessary because you're an article reader nowadays, and
What do you read? You don't read articles?
I do, but I watch a lot of TV and movies in between. So it's kind of hard for me to really sit down and focus on. I'm more of a skimmer.
So when you are fast forwarding through 90% of the bullshit that you watch on Netflix anyway, you don't have enough energy to also flip through articles while you're watching the bullshit in 10 minutes? Really?
Yes, but see, this is the difference. What the studio audience doesn't know is that I have a feeling when you read your articles, you're sitting down, you're getting a nice, like, red wine, and you're dimming the lights, and then you're going to your heading, which would be like Suicide Squad news or Wonder Woman news, and then you leisurely read the articles that you have within your pocket.
I
It's
do.
a whole thing.
That's right.
I don't have time for that, Bill. I read the articles as they come to me. I don't delay.
So when you say read, you actually mean skim. So
I'm sorry.
when you say read, you actually mean you're skimming them.
Yeah, I look for keywords.
Okay. All right. Well, this explains so much, but okay.
That's why I've been tricked by some articles of fake news that you pointed out to me.
Because you're not actually reading them, you're just skimming them. This is the problem with the internet. It's
I'm gonna
created
call you up on the
people
phone,
of
Bill. I
article
read an
skimmers.
article that says Disney is going bankrupt. You'll be like, you idiot.
You gave me one this week that I was like, really? Oh, yes, this was about Ben Affleck signing a contract for all 3 Batman movies, plus like a Batman and Robin cartoon and a podcast about Batman. Yeah, that was
How did you know that was fake news?
Jay. There's a rule of thumb. If it sounds ridiculous and it's on Twitter, there's a 90% chance it's fake.
So why is Ben Affleck signing a contract for multiple Batman movies ridiculous? Why is that so out of the realm?
They can barely get him to sign up for the one he's in now. If he was going to do the rest of them, that shit would be all over real news sites like The Hollywood Reporter, The Wrap, Variety, AW. Those are legitimate news sites. Anything outside of those sites already has like a 75% chance of being fake. So then you have to go into any other site besides those sites with a wary eye. Then, if it's backed up by a legitimate news source, one of those 5 Hollywood Bibles we just mentioned, then there's a chance it could be true. But you really actually probably want to get something directly from either the artist himself by tweets or their publicist or someone working for the actual company they're working for. WB, DC, maybe Jeff Johns, Zack Snyder, Ron Howard's been tweeting up a storm directly onto Instagram. Also, so that's how you tell what's real.
Well, I guess this really narrows down the people that we should be targeting for sponsors. I guess you just kicked everybody else to the curb. I guess Joe Blow's movies and all these other first showing, I guess they're out, huh? Those are out.
I'm just saying there's a lot of hyperbole on the Twitterverse. And there's a lot of copy and paste, and there's a lot of spreading of false news without people actually checking the facts. So you have to go into it with a very big grain of salt, unless it comes from a real big news source.
I'm going to probably call you up on the phone one day in a few months and say, Bill, I just saw an article that says Popular Cinema Podcast is one of the most downloaded podcasts of all time. It says it right here.
Yeah, and it's going to be like joeschmo.com, and I'm going to be like, fake news! I follow 700 Twitter accounts, and probably 10 of them are legitimate news sources, in my opinion.
That would seem to bother me, the fact that you have to kind of sift through all that shit. That would bother me.
It's not really, because you do want to get people's sort of takes or what's out there in the ether about things, and the blogger sphere is helpful for that when you realize, they're all going to come for something like they did with The Dark Tower. You can see the trends. When you see everybody shitting on something, it becomes sort of like a popular thing to do. So that it's handy for that, but it's not handy for factual information.
Okay. Are you ready to get this party started, part 2 style?
I am.
All right. Well, you've
in the man cave, under my Spidey blanket, staring at my Spidey poster, looking at my Captain America shield.
This is exactly why we can't really do a video showing.
Why is that?
Because you're not going to be professional. You're not going to wear a suit or tie. You're just going to be rolling around in some sort of footsie slippers, Spider-Man blanket.
What can I say? I like to be comfortable.
All right. Let's start off with our first story sent to you. I feel that this one is relevant because we go to AMC, and apparently their stock plunged 26%. And as a result of their stock plunging, they have announced plans to save $30 million by the end of the year by reducing operating hours and cutting staff levels, among other measures.
So this means instead of posting the ticket sales 2 days before the movie starts, they'll be posting them 2 hours before the movie starts, I suppose.
I would like to think that maybe as a result of this, that the person who's in charge of maybe putting the tickets out there sooner at the location that we go to, maybe that person will be kind of, cut, and somebody else will be elevated to his position who has no problems with releasing the tickets earlier and making sure that all the theaters are available for big movies like Star Wars and getting all the other crap out of there like A Walk Through the Trees. I mean,
Here's what I would suggest to them: stop putting the big movie times in 3D because no one gives a fuck about 3D anymore. Okay, post the
I
shit.
don't know. I think there's a lot of people that still do the 3D.
I don't think so. They don't even make 3D TVs anymore. They don't make 3D Blu-rays anymore. They're sort of like a passe thing. In fact, IMAX announced this week that they're going to stop putting out when they put their movies in IMAX. Like when they do like the IMAX showings for like the first couple weeks of release, they're going to stop doing 3D and they're just going to put shit in 2D, which would actually be beneficial to me because I'd like IMAX. I like the concept, but I'm not doing 3D. And most of the times when they put shit in IMAX, they do automatic 3D on it. But they're going to cut back on that shit because people aren't doing it anymore.
Do you see that this is going to be in the future? I'm expanding from this AMC article, and just to sum it up for the people before I move on with it, is that revenues are dropping this year, and there's been a lot of blockbusters that actually weren't blockbusters. What would be the opposite of a blockbuster? Blockbuster. What would be the opposite of that?
Blockbusted?
Oh, okay. Blockbusted. I like it. I like it. So anyway, things are down. Such flops from like Baywatch and King Arthur. These things have all kind of sort of like put the market in total at a bit of a loss.
Here's the problem.
And not even with the bigger movies. Go ahead.
I don't think that there's any more flops than there have been in the past, as far as like box office disappointments. The problem is everybody's eggs are in less baskets now. So that instead of having 5 flops out of like 15 movies you release, now you've got 5 flops out of like 7 movies you released or 8 movies you released. So when the majority of your movies, because you're making less movies, are making less money than you thought, then that becomes a problem. And I think that's what's happening. Now, how do they solve this problem? I think one thing is they start maxing or capping budgets at a lower rate. I think they did that with Dark Tower. Dark Tower only cost, although it looks like it cost pretty good money. I was shocked to find out
about $60 million.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked about it. That's cheaper than the X-Men first movie that came out in 2000, which was 17 years ago. So, true enough, there was a lot less characters in this movie, but I think that's actually very economical for a modern day blockbuster movie. And I think that was smart of them.
Why? Because they're hedging their bets?
Well, probably. I mean, they're saying, we're not sure exactly where this is going to go, and I haven't read the results yet, but I think it made like $19 million, which isn't a lot, but if you consider it only cost $60 million, that's 1/3 of their budget already. But anyway, I don't know what other solutions. People are going to say, make better movies, but I don't think that that's really the answer. And I don't think that bad movies are really destroying the box office. If that was true, there wouldn't be 6 Transformers movies.
Well, either way, the numbers speak for themselves. It seems that revenues are down.
Well, right, but I don't think it's about the types of movies or that people are tired of the movies that they're putting out and people want fresher stuff. I don't think that's really true. I think it's more true that, like I said, they're putting more of their eggs in lesser baskets, and I think there's other shit drawing people away from movies.
Well, that makes sense to me. Absolutely, that makes sense to me.
I don't know how.
But the effect is AMC is slashing cost. That's the effect of all of this at this point in time.
Right.
Do you see that 3D will be disappearing anytime soon?
I think it will. I think the 3D gimmick is kind of going the way of the dodo. Like I said, they're not doing TV manufacturers aren't making 3D TVs anymore, and Blu-ray discs and 4K discs they're not really doing 3D anymore. So it's not going to have the sort of second avenue revenue stream. And like I said, IMAX is going to stop putting stuff in 3D. So I think 3D is kind of over as a concept.
You know, I've always had a visceral reaction to every time there was some sort of Resident Evil movie marketed with 3D, and they would show you a scene where Axe was coming to the camera, and I felt like as though I'm not actually going to pay for this gimmick. Like, it just seems so gimmicky to me.
Well, yeah, we've both
And
been very anti 3D ever since they started it with Avatar.
well, anyway, so do you think our AMC Westwood will be affected come time for our November showing of Thor Ragnarok and Justice League?
I hope not. I mean, the worst I think I don't think it'll close. I think it does pretty brisk business from what I've seen from going there with you. But like I said, they might cut back on the 3D times. They might cut back on. I mean, they said they're going to cut back on people that are, working there. I hope that doesn't mean like longer lines at the concession because that's a pretty bad scene right there. Anyway,
Well, aren't you the person with the? You got some sort of VIP? Don't you
yeah,
get in the
I
VIP
have
line?
Stubbs Premier card, but it doesn't really do shit for you when they only have one line, including the Stubbs Premier line is the same line as all the other lines. It's just ridiculous. But and then when they take the other people outside of the Stubbs line first before we keep even people in the Stubbs line, it's a whole other topic of conversation. But anyway, I don't really see that they can cut much of the staff at that theater particular location back very much. So I hope it doesn't. You know, if they're going to make it so bad, I prefer they just close it and open up less theaters. But okay.
I didn't mean to actually do that. I thought you were finishing up your point, and so
I'm
I was trying to time it.
rude.
Speaking of bad movies, you were sort of kind of segue into this next topic. It's curious that you sent me this article, and it's about Rotten Tomatoes and the power of the tomato meter. Apparently, the critics and the studios are very upset. Not the critics, the studios are very upset with the power of Rotten Tomatoes, and things are sort of reaching this tipping point where the showings of these movies are inching closer and closer to the openings because they don't want to release it to the critics because they're trying to avoid getting what has been termed as the green splat instead of the fat red rosy tomato that everybody hopes to get. So, does Rotten Tomatoes have too much power, Bill?
I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. That's no surprise, I'm sure.
Oh, how dare you!
I don't. I don't care for Rotten Tomatoes. I think it is a bully zone. I think it suffers from the same thing that the rest of the internet suffers from, which is hive mind or groupthink.
We are Borg.
Yes,
You
we are
shall be
Borg.
assimilated.
Right. I think there's a whole lot of people who are copying and pasting other people's opinions and just submitting their shit because either they want to be in the majority or they want to be one of the cool kids because they don't have any popularity in their own personal lives or something. But I do find there's like a group mentality that happens, and I don't like it. And I think it's easy for people to go onto Rotten Tomatoes and look at the tomato meter and see the green splat, as you refer to, and decide that they're not going to see something. I don't personally go to movies based on critic reviews. There's only one or two critics I even really find that I have any interest in whatsoever. And those critics, obviously, I read their reviews after I've seen a movie. But I mean, everybody's different and everybody goes to see things for their own reasons. My personal preference is that I go to see things that interest me, topic wise or, subject matter wise. if it looks something like I want to see, then that's what draws me to it. It doesn't really have anything to do with critics, trailers, or what have you, because I found in my personal experience, judging movies from trailers is not something that works for me. I oftentimes don't like trailers and end up liking the movies a lot, especially with these Marvel movies, etc. But I just I don't want I want to go into a movie not having a bias based on someone else's preferential feelings about it. So I just avoid reviews as much as possible. Always have.
I don't feel as though Rotten Tomatoes is actually the problem. I
Yeah.
feel as though this whole idea that the studios are now responding to the power of the tomato meter, I find it disingenuous because in part it seems as though they want to advertise and take credit, like when they sit there and go two thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. They're they are
By the
they're
way,
quick
we've both been dead
they're
for
quick
20
and eager
years.
to welcome the positivity of saying we're scoring 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. But what they really want to get up their panties in a bunch if you say something negative to them. And if you say something negative about their movie, then they want to take their toys and go home, or they're not going to let you see the movie until it opens up, you know, day and date. And it's kind of, I'm just not really a fan of it. I'm just not a fan of it all
So
whatsoever.
you are a fan of critics jumping on a bandwagon and everybody judging something based on other people's opinions rather than their own, or to have an agenda of sounding like they're somehow part of the
I
elite
guess
that takes on something.
I,
So
I
you're
guess
part of
if
it
you
as
want
well.
me to if you want me to live in reality, I feel there's a huge swath of the population that would look at Rotten Tomatoes maybe to help them decide if they're going to go out this weekend. If they have a couple things in mind that they want to see, they'll look to Rotten Tomatoes. And if it comes up like it's 20%, I can see those people being like, oh, it's really low. How about we pick something else then? Because I don't want to go see a shitty movie. I can see being that something that sways the masses. I would say that's reality. But part of me in fantasy world likes to think that people have their interest and their opinions, and that if they want, that will just be one component in how they reach the decision to go see a movie.
But that's not how
I,
most people use it. And we know that. We know
well,
that
that's why
most
I
people
said my
don't.
part is fantasy. Yeah, I feel like you should be personal responsible for
But
yourself
but you
and
know
be
that that's
the
not true.
scapegoat to blame Rotten Tomatoes.
But you know that's not true. If that were true, it might be a different story. But we know that people are not using it as one component. We know that people are using it in the first order that you said, which is to basically say thumbs up or thumbs down to something that looks interesting to them or that they have an interest in going to see based on other people's opinions. And for example, I'm just going to use the most obvious one that sticks out there. Batman versus Superman would have been a movie that, if we only judged it on the Rotten Tomatoes score, would never have gone to see that movie. And that is one of my favorite movies of the year last year. It had a 7 or 8% freshness rating.
Oh, that low?
Yeah, it was low. I will use another prime example, Fantastic Four, which is another movie I thoroughly enjoyed that year it came out. And that was one that had a extremely low Rotten Tomatoes score. Both cases, I think, were unfairly maligned because people had an agenda against those movies for some particular reason and shit all over them, as what they normally do when they get on a bandwagon about something.
So nobody has a problem when it works in the reverse, where you get a Rotten Tomato score of 90% and everybody loves your movie. Oh my God, the critics love this. Let's just take Moonlight, for example. Got to go see Moonlight. This is just some sort of groundbreaking material. Never seen anything like it before. Oh, the critics love it. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 90. And then I go see the movie and it sucks. Are the studios upset? Is anybody upset by that? That I've wasted my money on something?
I'm upset by the
No, because they're sitting there taking it. Long as
I'm
they're getting
upset by the
paid.
fact that it's the same thing in reverse for me. It's the Rotten Tomatoes bandwagon group think hive mind nonsense where everybody says it's best picture winning material. And then we sat down and watched that movie and thought this is a boring slug of a film. And it's the same thing in reverse. This is why I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. It's not an indicator of anything remotely accurate for what my opinions are. And that's just my personal viewpoint.
So you think that the people are not smart enough to figure this out for themselves?
We know they're
I
not.
mean,
What do you mean we don't think? We know they're not. We know that people do not judge things as thoroughly as maybe they should as far as movies go. We know that everyone just goes, "What did you think?" talking to their friend at the water cooler at work. And then that person spreads the word, and then it becomes a hit or a miss based on other people's thoughts of it.
is there anything wrong with that? Because at the end of the day, this is probably not something that's a high priority on the list. It's more like an entertainment thing. So they don't necessarily put a lot of thought into how they make that decision. So
That's
somebody can sit there and
it,
tell them to sway. So they want to be swayed. They're open to it. Is that
well,
really a
they're sheep.
problem?
Yes, they're sheep. They are followers instead of leaders. And if that's the way you want to live your life, and if that's what you want to do, is have your friends dictate to you what they think is cool, and then you find that to be cool, then that's your business. But that's not my particular. I don't particularly find that worthy of attention.
I don't know. I feel like you're being awfully harsh. That's how I feel as though you're somehow upset that the people are not upping their game when it comes to picking their movies. You expect more out of them, and I just don't know if they really expect that much out of themselves.
Well, that's fine then. If they don't, if they want to be sheep, go ahead and be a sheep. I mean, ba
Well,
whatever.
the
But
Hollywood
I don't.
Reporter article point the Hollywood Reporter article points out that this social media research firm by the name of Physiology, it sounds sort of like a fake news thing to me, apparently tracked every major Hollywood release, discovered that a Rotten Tomato score has the most influence on moviegoers 25 and younger.
That's not at all shocking, right? Because those are the people that are using social media the most.
Oh, okay.
So that shit spreads like wildfire.
I don't know what to say. So you think it's okay for the studios to go dark and critics not be able to review the movie early before it breaks out for everybody else's general consumption. They just rather release it on Thursday evening to everybody all at once,
If that's the only
just to
way you
try
can
to sit
get
there
this,
and stop the brunt of negative reviews.
if that's the only way you can get people to get off of the fucking bandwagon of hate is to limit their access to something, then yeah, I guess they're going to do what they have to do. I would rather the studios do that than go out of business because everybody jumps on the haterade bandwagon and shit, goes south. I would rather them limit people's exposure to it and then make people then go out and do like they used to do. Go out and see a movie and make up your own goddamn mind. There's a thought.
Mm,
And here's the
I
other
don't
thing.
know.
We discussed this the other day about how you're like, well, people don't want to go spend their $50 and their popcorn money and their weekend fun money on something that they think is a piece of shit. So, okay, fine. Like I said, don't take your whole family to see every movie you want. Most of the time, with these geek type films, the wives don't want to see this shit any damn way. Okay? The kids are like, whatever, dad, let's just get the hell out of this house. I'm bored as fuck. And the wives are like, whatever, I guess I'll have to take one for the team. But, don't tell me that the businessmen out there, like yourself, like myself, can't possibly, when their wife's busy or their kids are at soccer practice or something, can't find 2 hours in the middle of a week or on the weekend or on a Sunday morning or when the fuck ever to go to a damn movie, sit down, plunk down their $8 because $8 is not that much money for one ticket. And it's not any much more than they spend on their daily cup of coffee at their Starbucks on their way to work. So let's not act like the money can't be had either. People will make time and money for what they want to do.
I feel as though this to wrap up my last point here. I feel like the power should be with the studio audience, and I think Rotten Tomatoes gives us power because the studios have all the power out there, and now they're trying to even what's the word move move the chess pieces closer to where somehow we don't have access to information.
What
They
I
want to
would
keep us
prefer
they
if they
they want
want
to keep
to do
us
this,
in the dark. Let me finish. They want to keep us in the dark until the last possible moment and hope that they can sit there and soak some money out before everybody finds out that it's a piece of shit movie. Okay? Because they open it up when it's all positive, but when it's negative, they're still trying to recoup it. I feel like the Rotten Tomatoes holds their feet to the fire, that sits there and spreads around social media, which is what this is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be for general audiences anyway. You're
but
making the movies
that's not
for a
who they
wide swath
movies
of people to
recently.
enjoy. And if the wide swath of people are not enjoying it, then you failed.
They don't send movie fans to early screenings. They send movie critics to early screenings. What I would prefer if they in fact have to keep the system the way it is stop screening for critics and do like fan screenings. Do like average moviegoer early screenings for people and then give them a certain password or whatever to go on Rotten Tomatoes and put their fan review, their amateur movie going review up. And I would prefer that over what we have now, which is a bunch of jaded, bitter movie critics that end up having to see 90% of shit like you end up watching 90% shit on your Netflix and then are tired of seeing so much shit. And so nothing pleases them anymore because they've seen so much shit, they can't recognize decent shit from shit anymore.
Bill, I want the jaded, shitty critic. That's what I want.
I know
Okay.
you do because that's what you are.
I don't want
But
some amateur. What am I going to read a review that says review by Bill? By the way, I really love Batman versus Superman. Superman looks so hot. Oh my god! Oh my god! It was so hot. Superman, it's so great. Action was intense. I mean, why would I want to read your amateur review?
because I actually am a person that's probably got more in common with you than a movie critic who goes to sit at his 10th showing at Sundance in a day and decides I've had enough with this crap. That's why. I'm an
Yeah,
average person who has an average life, like probably most people who go see movies, these types of movies, and probably would have a better chance of having a good time at a movie than a movie critic.
I just realized the title for our episode 50th show. I'm going to have it certified fresh, 90%.
That's fun. That's fun. Works for me.
Maybe we'll get some more downloads since we're rated fresh.
Wow. Okay.
All right. And some other news, which is kind of weird because we've discussed earlier in this part one of 50th, we talked about Confederate from the creators of Game of Thrones.
Right.
I like to discuss this that apparently Amazon is offering their own alternate history series,
Right.
the Yin to Confederate's Yang. And apparently, in this Amazon story, it will be focusing on freed slaves who formed their own country called New Colonia out of the states of Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, given to them as reparations for the country's original sin. New Colonia has been at peace with the U.S. for 20 years following 150 years of fighting, but their newfound accord is endangered by an economic role reversal, where the new country has emerged as a new global power, Wakanda, as America slides into decline. What do you think of this show called Black America on Amazon, Bill, in light of
I
Confederate?
think if there's room for Confederate, there's room for Black America. I think that's what America's about is, expressing creatively different points of view. So, I think, I'm all for it. If they're going to do Confederate, which I don't have a problem with, then I have no problem with them doing the alternate of Confederate, which would be Black America. I think both of them are controversial in their own ways and thought provoking and possibly could create some discussion around the issue of race that doesn't necessarily involve, the same topics we've covered before.
When we had this discussion a couple weeks ago, and you were trying to probe me as to how I felt about it and whatever else, I think in light of hearing about this Amazon show, which I'm actually intrigued by the concept of it, is that I find it to be, at least the initial presentation of it, to be something more positive. For myself, I find it to be something more positive versus Confederate, and I think that's why if I were to be drawn to the material, that's the reason why.
Okay.
But I can see reparations. No offense to Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. I do love myself some of French Quarter here, but we got some shitty states. We couldn't get like, I don't know, California, Oregon, or Washington or something. I don't know.
Isn't the idea is to give them southern states because those are sort of backwater states?
Oh, I guess so. No offense, but we don't have any downloads from Mississippi, Alabama, or Louisiana, so.
So you're not worried about it. Either one of them, honestly, Confederate or Black America, doesn't really. I don't really see myself sitting down to watch that on a weekend. So
I can see myself watching them. I mean, I like this whole idea of alternate timeline where they get their own countries. This rollout by Amazon seems to be more, in a lot of ways, something I'd be down for. The thing that Confederate has going forward, it seems very controversial, and you almost want to see exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So that draws some interest, and it has the creators from Game of Thrones, which has a lot of cred with people. Interesting times. I would love for them to come out at the same time. You talk about I bet you there would be a news poll that 75% of the black families were watching Black America and 80% of the white families were watching Confederate. I'm sure there will be another poll that comes out at the time of these shows, once again, to accentuate how divided this country is. Guaranteed.
I'm giving my $8 to Black Panther next year and calling it a day. Next.
Oh, by the way, did you check out Chadwick Boseman and A Message from the King?
I know you're going to be shocked about this, but it slipped my mind completely.
You've got to. I said just give it 5 minutes.
I will get to it at some point, but I forgot about it. I was watching Good Times last night. There was a Good Times marathon on, and I was kind of like drawn in. I was sucked in because it was the Janet Jackson episodes. Remember when she was like adopted by them and she was getting burned by her mother with the iron?
I don't recall she was getting burned by an iron. That seems very dark.
Her mother was like abusing her, and JJ was going around going, "Dynamite!" I like it because it's kind of, it gives me like nostalgia feels for like when the world was a simpler place. I kind of like pretending it was like 1978 instead of the shit show we're watching now unfold in front of us.
Wasn't Norman Lear the creator behind Good Times?
He was, but there was a whole big thing that I never really knew about, like controversy with that show, which apparently Esther Roll, who played the mom, she like quit the show in season 4, and John Amos, who played the dad, quit the show because they both started feeling like Jimmy Walker was sort of giving like the Jar Jar Step and Fetch It performance, because they said it was turning into like a minstrel show, which I never really knew anything about any of that when I was a kid watching the show, because they kind of felt like it was, sort of making, I don't know, a caricature out of the black character of JJ.
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought that when I watched that show. And when I watched the show again, I don't really think that. I don't think that JJ is a minstrel, but apparently John Amos and Esther Roll felt so, and they quit the show. So
yeah, my grandmother thought I'm sorry that JJ was a minstrel. Absolutely,
really?
Step and Fetch It. Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And unfortunately, I go by Payne on the show, but you know my first name.
Yeah.
And somebody was trying to call me when I was younger, JJ. And my grandmother would have none of it. She stopped that shit in its fucking tracks.
Really?
Because she knew that he was a buffoon and she was not going to have her grandson be associated with a buffoon.
I don't see
Now,
how he's any more
she
of a
didn't say the word
buffoon.
minstrel, but obviously, I think that's the whole idea behind it, that it's a buffoon character.
I don't see how he's any more of a buffoon than like Jim Carrey was a buffoon in all the movies he made in the early 90s. I don't see it as a black buffoon. I don't see it as a character in blackface kind of insult to Black America. I just see it as, you know what, he's a funny person and that's his character because that's what makes him work. It's
You know, I feel as though I don't know what type of blue pill you drink sometime, but it's almost like you're just oblivious as to the world's issues and problems. Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't see it. I don't see JJ as a minstrel. I just don't. I don't get it.
Yes, I don't have time to get in with you. I don't have time. We'll talk about it on PCP podcast after dark. I
Okay.
will write this down. And I got a new book in the studio here where I keep track of my notes, and I'm going to write down, explain to Bill why JJ is a minstrel.
Okay.
You know, I've been tasked with a lot, and one of those is keeping you black. It's been very difficult. It's been very trying. It's been very trying. It takes every strength, every fiber in my body to keep you on the path. No matter, I feel like it's like the Hobbit movies. Don't stray too far from the path, and you're just
Really?
off in the woods somewhere. You're off in the
So, as
woods.
a Black American, instead of enjoying a show about people of color on my TV screen every week, when there was a time when there wasn't really that many people of color on my TV screen, period, and it's a 22-minute, kind of breezy show about a family who's making it through despite the fact that they're surrounded by poverty, which in some areas was similar to my own life. I'm supposed to be like this. He's behaving like a caricature. He's acting like all the street Negroes that I don't want to be associated with. I don't want this. I hate this. Instead of going, oh, that JJ's a hoot. Huh. Okay.
You know, Norman Lear is been nominated and supposed to be accepting a Kennedy Center Honor Award.
I know.
We talked about this. I want to say like last year at some other time where we went over the list of people that were being honored. And for those who know from listening to the show or just knowing because they're just smart, is an annual honor given to those in the performing arts for their lifetime of contributions.
Yeah. Everybody knows what the Kennedy Centers are.
Okay, whatever. So he's up for that, but he's not going because he's not a big fan of Trump.
What does Trump have to do with it? Is he the one that gives them the awards? Yeah, I
yes.
think he is. Okay.
Yeah. He's taking a pass on that.
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out there since we kind of got sidetracked over on your Good Times Norman Lear thing. That's just real news. That's real news, Bill.
Right. Gotcha.
And by the way, I don't have any producer in my head coming through on my headphones going, hey, let's throw that out there. Nobody's handing me scripts. Scooties is over here taking a damn nap.
Yeah, we're way off topic, but anyway, you were.
I can't believe you with the JJ. So wait, if you were to have a child, which is impossible based on your current preferences,
really?
You'd name your kid JJ?
Really suck me. What?
You name your kid JJ?
Well, it would be closer to naming it after you, but yeah, probably I wouldn't have a problem with it.
And so when somebody would walk up to you and go, Bill, is this your kid? And they go, yeah, its name is JJ. And you're like, oh, is it after the Good Time characters? Dynamite!
First of all, that show is 40 fucking years old, and no one knows what the fuck it is anymore. On a cable network in standard depth. No one cares anymore.
Oh, please. What? So what? Somebody under 25 years of age might not know, but anybody
who
over...
the fuck is JJ? Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to be.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. This is one of those words. It's like these names. Certain names go the way of the dodo, Bill. There's certain names. What is it, like Beatrice? Give me some other names out there. I don't know. There's certain names that are no longer viable in today's society. They have connotations put with them. I mean, let's see here. I'm trying to think of something. Some names that have gone. I'll think of some later, but they're like Leroy. Are people still naming their kids Leroy? Are you telling me I lost you? You're messing around with your microphone. And now I can't hear you. Did your phone? I'm going to have to splice together 3 of these now. Is that what you're telling me? You just couldn't have gone to your computer. I'm very upset. Very upset. I don't know if I should actually stop the broadcast and come back in, or do I keep going? You could send me a chat message to let me know what the hell's going on. But I guess that's not going to happen. You're going to force me to stop the broadcast. Motherfucker.